And so good morning, beloved mighty companions on this amazing Lenten journey, day 21, the grace of God, which I also like to rephrase as the pearls of grace from God. And so this is a conversation that is enlivening and enriching and soothes the soul, because truly none of us is outside of the grace of God ever. And we may make it up and believe it to be so, but the remembrance and the realization that God's grace is our sufficiency in all things, and that we are always in that presence, is life-affirming. And so that's what we will be discussing today and actually receiving this day. So good morning, everyone who is joining us in this now moment and in the moments that come, knowing that it all collapses into the holy instant that we now enter into. And so we begin our practice together, our practice of mastery, of revealing the mastery of the ministry that is within us now. And we begin this by following the pathway of this Lenten journey by turning within. And as we turn within, we actually are denying the power of a world made of a mind separate, of the imaginings of a mind that lapsed into fearfulness. And we just deny that it has any power in our lives. And in that denial, in that turning toward truth, turning toward reality, turning toward love, we affirm a power and a presence that is all that is, in which we are immersed in this now moment, only requiring our full attention and our full appreciation of the glory of the all that is, benevolent, whole, innocent, pure, loving spirit that I call God, that I know to be love. And that as I claim that God is all that there is, the only power and presence, the illuminator, creator of life, I know that I am as God created me, that I abide in this wholeness, in this innocence, in this light, as love, as Christ. And so as Christ, I enter into the sanctuary of my being, the garden of my consciousness. And here I know that I am free, I am unlimited, that nothing occurs in my experience except that which I have called forth. And so I call forth love. I call forth peace. I call forth power. I call forth the faithfulness of God, the strength and the power of the all that is. That in this harmonizing all power under heaven and earth, move in, through, and as me. I declare that the only relationship of value is my relationship with God, the source of my being, the benevolent being of my hearts. And it is here that I allow the receptivity of the grace of God to descend into my awareness like pearls of grace, seeds of the divine, in the garden of my consciousness. And herein I abide in grace as my sufficiency in all things. I call forth a greater understanding of the worth and the worthiness of the I am of my being to abide in this grace. And I bless the garden, knowing that it supports me, that all things are reflecting back to me that which simply teaches and informs in loving ways. I submit to the evolution of my consciousness through the involution of the Spirit. This time is blessed. We are a blessing. We pause here in this parentheses in eternity for a holy tryst with Spirit. Breathe in and breathe out. Accept and receive the love of God. And so it is. Amen. 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 Wow. Ashe. And so we bring our attention and awareness back in whatever way that we wish. As we continue this conversation, as we may choose to open the body eyes wherever we are, know that the spiritual light, the illuminating light of the spiritual eye is now activated, that we soften the body eyes and allow the spiritual eye to see, the spiritual ears to hear, the heart to be open wide. As we contemplate the grace of God today. So, reading from Keeping a True Lent, the grace of God, day 21. It begins with a quote. It says, "As far as the east is from the west, so far hath he removed our transgressions from us." Grace means goodwill, favor, disposition to show mercy. Therefore, we do not hold ourselves as bond servants of the law, but as recipients of the grace of God, as sons and daughters of the Most High. So, this, as far as the east is from the west, our transgressions are removed from us. In truth, our transgressions, what could be called errors of thought, religiously may have been called sin. They are not real. They are not lasting. We are not married to it, and we are not marked by it. That there is a saying, I believe it's in the Course in Miracles, that God holds our divinity in trust, in safety, in wholeness, in perfection, while we dabble with the mind of error, with the ego mind, while we dabble in making an experience of separation. And what we have done in this journey thus far, following the Christ consciousness as exemplified by Jesus as our teacher, is that, we begin by turning from that. And the moment that we turn from that, in that instant of turning, that revolutionary turning to truth, to source, to love, the makings and mechanisms and machinations of a world made of fear and an experience, let's make it personal to us, dissipates and disappears into the nothingness from which it came, and that God doesn't withhold forgiveness. God cannot behold inequity. There is no inequity in the truth of who we are. And so that is what we turn to, and there is grace in this. This is not a system of the past, and that the past has no precedence. So in this holy instant, we can release ourselves, we can forgive ourselves. It's really only ourselves that cling to perceived transgressions of the past. And what we're claiming here as Christ is that we are free, that the past has no precedence in this journey, and we can let it go. And we can receive help in that we're not servants of a law that we've made up. So remember, race consciousness yesterday talked about that we made up laws. And it says, what is a bondservant? A bondservant is somebody who pays homage and does the work without any pay. We are not enslaved by the laws that we made up, by the laws of humanity, that while we are in that mindset, we are certainly, we experience the consequences of that, but that we can rise in consciousness. And as we do so, and as we take responsibility for our thoughts and thinkings, as we turn toward affirmative thinking, as we place upon the altar all of the things that we thought would keep us safe, all of the places where fear has made a home in our heart, and all of our best ideas and all of our assets and the good aspects of the person. We place the personality, the body. We've gone through all of these different aspects, and we place that upon the altar and walk into the garden, and then the garden becomes ours. We've risen in consciousness, and we've risen into the mental laws and the spiritual laws that we've been speaking of, that it is done as we believe, but we get to choose. And we can align our will with the will of God, which is for our happiness, which is for our joyfulness. And then as we do that, as we tend our gardener as the wise gardener, we have the opportunity to till the soil and to uproot those aspects that were cultivated in fear. And as we do so, we prepare to receive the pearls of grace, the seeds of grace that descend into our consciousness. And continuing on, it says, that we can be the recipients of this grace because of who we are. So the grace of God extends to all, not alone to one, not alone to one race or creed or culture, that all of us are created equal and that we are all in favor of God. God plays no favorites, that the pearls of grace fall upon us all, the sun shines upon us all, and it is we that may block it, but it doesn't mean that it isn't there. And so we are removing the obstacles to the awareness of the grace that already exists. And continuing on, it says the grace of God is greater than the laws of man. So we've kind of already discussed that. We may make certain laws and restrictions for ourselves and become servants and obey them. But if we are servants of the law, our obedience is unto death. So remember, in that race consciousness, that we made up laws about what life and death is. And when we pay homage to those laws, when those laws become what we serve, then we experience, we're under the influence of those laws. But if we are servants of righteousness, of right thinking, our obedience is unto life. And so, this is a practice that is about life. It is not about death. To become recipients of that which the Father, Mother God, has bestowed upon us, we should take up the element of grace into consideration, that even beyond what we ask, seek, earn, or deserve, what we believe that we deserve under the quote-unquote law, God is more willing to give. So, what I would say here is God's never not giving. The gifts are already given. It's just really the grace is there, and it is sufficient unto any and every need. And in each and every holy instant that we connect in this, that we forgive ourselves, and oh, beloved, you were mistaken, not with seriousness, but with innocence and love. Oh, beloved, you were operating under this law that you made up that said that you weren't enough or that you didn't deserve something. Oh, sweetheart, couldn't possibly be the truth. Oh, beloved, do you not know who you are? And allow the remembrance of who we are. And there is humility in this. There is the recognition that, oh yeah, I'm as God created me. I thought I could make up a whole nother story about myself, but it just ain't true. It just ain't true. And so, beloved of my being, my higher self, I'm like really returning to myself that is the recipient of that which is already given. And so we just take a breath here. We stop blocking ourselves. We forgive ourselves. We love ourselves. We return to love, to the self. And so God, as the great creative principle, knew what it was doing when it created us of love, of itself, of the universe, will always meet us more than halfway. Well, I say, has already met us. There is no distance. It is we that turn, and God is there instantly. There is no time, space, or distance. Those are things that we've made up. So by becoming receptive to the grace of God, we receive the measure of God's provision, which exceeds any of our imaginings. And so I just want to pause here and take a breath. So we started yesterday with the idea of celebration. And to me, this is what grace is. So how do we practice? How do we practice grace? We practice the idea of grace by maybe uttering the words, God's grace is my sufficiency in all things. We take that into our contemplative practice this day. We commune with the higher self and ask, how is God's grace my sufficiency in all things? What is God's grace? How may I soften the eyes that I may see how supported I am in every holy instant, in every moment? And so why is celebration important? Because then celebration shifts the mindset so that we are celebrating. We are celebrating in gratitude the gifts that are already present. And when we bring our attention and awareness through our celebrations, I celebrate this day, I celebrate this practice, I celebrate this journey that we're on together. I celebrate the gifts that I have realized through the devotion, the dedicated devotion of this practice, that after 21 days, I celebrate the shifts that have occurred in my mind and my consciousness, that as I bring the body and I place this as the priority in my life, that my life shifts and changes, that my day proceeds in a different way, because I've started in the beginning with this mindset. Begin to cultivate the celebrations of the awareness of this journey that you have already realized and partaken of. And that as we focus on that, it increases, because that is the way spiritual law works. Another way that I like to enhance grace in my life is, you remember, at least in my life, we would say grace before a meal. Incorporate in the practice of your day moments of saying grace, of saying your celebrations and your gratitudes for the gifts that are already given. And meal times are a wonderful time to do that. I love in the Muslim Islamic tradition of praying 5 times a day, sunrise, sunset, and 3 other times in between, the call to prayer throughout the day. That the devotion becomes a practicing of the presence. I want to close today is with the practice, and this comes from the way of mastery. And so I just invite us to pause here for a moment. And so the way of mastery is Jeshua ben Joseph, is Jesus as Christ. That is teaching now. And it talks about grace here. It says, grace does not descend until your Father knows that you are willing to prepare a place to receive it. This is why in the process of healing and awakening, it is not necessary to seek for love. It is only necessary to prepare the place, the soil, by choosing to discover the obstacles to love, which all come down to fear, and to be willing to loosen that root, that it might be removed from the garden of your consciousness. And take a breath here. Then the rain of grace that purifies, transforms, awakens, and brings Christ, consciousness to the mind, can descend gently. For when the rain falls upon hard ground, it strikes the soil and runs off, and the garden remains barren. But the wise gardener who has softened the soil reached in and began to pull up the roots, sifted the soil, and made it soft, open, porous, with the intent of bringing forth a beautiful garden. And you will indeed be assisted. Then the rain of grace will fall gently without it being earned. It is given freely. And so we just simply take a breath here. And we return to the garden. We return to the Garden of Eden of our consciousness. And we behold the garden. Oh my, how we've cultivated something wonderful and magnificent already. And as we sit in this garden as Christ, we know that we are perfectly free. And I'm going to shift to the I am. I know that I am perfectly free. And that as I behold the garden, anything that I see that I may perceive as a weed, that I may perceive that no longer belongs here, I simply acknowledge it. I ask it, what is it here to teach me? What thought of fear made a home in my heart here? And I become willing. I become willing to till that ground, to pull that weed up and out. And as I do so, I know, I believe there is a gift, a lesson here, and I accept and receive the lesson as a shift in consciousness, a shift from a belief in fear, of lack, of limitation, of unworthiness. And I say, oh, beloved, it is okay. I place it upon the altar. I release it. I receive the gift it brings. And I am now able to plant a seed of love in the soil that has made receptive to receive love. I walk not on this journey alone, that I approach the garden with Jesus, with Mary, with the divine self of my being, with the beloveds that walk with me, with my guides. And together in this garden, I call forth the pearls of grace to easily descend into my awareness this day. And I cross the threshold from fear to love, companioned, safe, knowing that the pearls of grace and God's grace are my sufficiency this day. I claim this, I allow it, I let it be, and I walk forth, filled with grace. And as I walk forth filled with grace, I extend grace to all whom I meet. And it is good and very good, and so it is. Amen. 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 And I take a breath here, and I pause. Sometimes extra grace is required for ourselves and for our lives, and for those who populate our lives. And so I practice the grace that is given me by being gracious and loving, forgiving and merciful to all of those whom I meet this day. Soft eyes, soft heart, perfectly safe. God's grace is our sufficiency this day. Have a beautiful day. I love you. Thank you for being with me.